Benches creaked. Jackets whispered. Someone coughed into a folded tissue. Judge Caprio traded a gentle joke with a nervous man about a parking sign, the way he'd done 1,000 mornings. People chuckled. Shoulders loosened. It felt like another small day with small troubles. Then the clerk read the next file. Case of Liam Walker. Speeding in a school zone. Failure to stop at a red light. Reckless driving. The judge's tone stayed light, but his eyes sharpened. All right, Mr. Walker, come on up. Let's see what kind of morning you're giving me. From the aisle, a tall, lean kid sauntered forward. Tan like he'd seen more resort pools than construction sites. Oversized designer hoodie. Spotless sneakers that looked more like collectibles than shoes. On his wrist, a watch that didn't belong on a 17-year-old. In his hand, a phone. Screen glowing with a half-open recording app. He stopped at the microphone without lifting his head, thumbs still moving. Caprio waited a beat. Could you look at me instead of your phone? He said. This is not a group chat. Soft laughter rippled through the older crowd, edged with irritation. Liam rolled his eyes just enough for the front row to see, then locked the phone with a sharp click. The sound bounced off the wood like a tiny door slamming. The clerk read from the citation. 42 miles per hour in a posted 20, adjacent to Lincoln Elementary. Camera evidence of entering a red light at Maple and 3rd during morning crossing. Complaint from a school bus driver stating the defendant cut in front of the bus while horns were sounding. Caprio studied the boy. You're 17, correct? Yeah, Liam said. You understand that at 42 in a school zone, you're not driving fast, the judge replied. You're playing roulette with other people's kids. A low, unhappy murmur moved through the benches. Grandparents shifted, picturing small backpacks and those flashing yellow signs. Caprio flipped a page. How did you get here this morning, Mr. Walker? I drove, Liam said, as if the answer were obvious. My car's right outside. An officer at the side spoke up. Your Honor, he's in the red Mercedes parked on the corner. Fire hydrant. The room reacted immediately. Dry laughs, breathy. Of course he is, a few heads shaking. Liam shrugged, a half smile on his face. I was going to move it after this. Relax. The judge didn't respond. He lowered his eyes to the file. Give me a minute to look through your history, he said. Liam took a small step back from the microphone, turning his shoulder to the bench. The courtroom camera panned to another angle. He glanced up, decided it wasn't on him, and raised his phone again. This old guy is killing me, he whispered into the front-facing camera, just loud enough for the nearest row to hear. Look! Still smiling at his own screen, he lifted his hand and, between himself and the lens, flicked his middle finger toward the bench. Not a big theatrical gesture, just a quick, practiced sign meant for his followers, not for the room. Only the room saw it. The veteran in the first row went still. A woman in a cardigan sucked in a breath. The air changed. Caprio's hand moved to his microphone. Mr. Walker, he said, voice very calm. Do you need both hands for court today? Or are you done sending your message? Judge Caprio let the last remark hang, then folded his hands. Mr. Walker, he said more coolly, any chance you're related to Daniel Walker of Walker Development Group? Liam's chin came up a notch. He's my dad, he replied. That name moved through the gallery like a draft under a door. That's the guy who knocked down the old library, someone muttered. Built those glass condos by the river, another added. Rents went crazy after that. For a lot of faces in that room, Walker meant cranes, dust, and neighbors priced out of streets they'd lived on for decades. Before the judge could say more, the side door opened, and heels hurried across the floor. I apologize for being late, Your Honor, a woman said, catching her breath. Sharon Walker, Liam's mother. She was polished, mid-40s, tasteful jewelry, blazer over a silk blouse. A badge from a city youth foundation dangled on a lanyard. She slipped in beside her son, fingers tightening on his shoulder, like she was taking her place at a podium. "Judge Caprio," she began. "Liam is a bright, responsible young man. Honor classes, lacrosse. He volunteers at our charity events." The clerk, still standing by the bench, cleared his throat softly. "File shows 3 prior speeding citations. Unpaid until collections notices," he said in a low voice. "Noise complaint last summer from a party at the Walker Residences complex." Sharon's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Then she recovered. "He's a teenager," she said quickly. "Nothing serious. We've handled issues privately to avoid unnecessary drama." Caprio ignored the varnish. "Liam," he asked, "when was the last time you heard the word no at home, and it actually stuck?" The boy gave a short, incredulous laugh. "I don't get in real trouble," he said. "I keep my grades up. It's not like I'm out robbing anybody." The judge shifted his gaze to Sharon. "Has he ever had to repair what he's broken himself?" he asked. "Not with your checkbook, with his own time and effort." She hesitated, then reached for memories that did her no favors. "Well, when he was 12, he broke a neighbor's window with a soccer ball. Our company fixed the whole frame. It was easier just to absorb the cost. Another time," she went on, "he scraped my Lexus backing it out. My husband said, 'Don't make a thing of it. We'll trade it in.'" She swallowed. "And when he got his first ticket at 16, our attorney resolved it before there was any mark on his record." Each example landed like a brick. Caprio turned back to Liam. "Why were you driving that fast past an elementary school?" he asked. "Running late for surgery? Putting out a fire?" Liam shrugged, eyes sliding away. "The light felt forever," he said. "I didn't feel like sitting there. It was dragging. I was bored." On the benches, someone exhaled sharply. A woman in a cardigan shook her head once, as if to clear it. The judge picked up a remote, tapped it lightly. "You know, Mr. Walker, court cameras don't care about followers," he said. "They just record." He glanced toward the monitor. "10 minutes ago, you pointed a certain finger at this bench and called me an old guy on your phone," he continued. "You didn't just insult one man in a robe." He gestured toward the rows of gray hair and lined hands. "You signaled to every person in here who's been driving longer than you've been alive that their rules, their fears, their grandchildren crossing that street are just background for your entertainment." Sharon leaned in. "Liam, apologize. Properly." He cleared his throat, defensive grin returning like a shield. "Sorry if anybody took it the wrong way," he said. "It was just a joke." Nobody laughed. Caprio flipped back to the top of the citation. "Mr. Walker," he said, "a moment ago you told me there were no children around. Empty street was the phrase, I believe." Liam shrugged. "Yeah, it was early. Nobody was there." The judge turned to the clerk. "What time is stamped on that school zone ticket?" 8:05 a.m., Your Honor, the clerk answered. "Lincoln Elementary. Morning drop-off." Caprio looked over his glasses. "Is the crossing guard from that intersection present?" From the second row, a woman in a simple blouse and school ID on a lanyard raised her hand. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "Karen Lopez. I teach 3rd grade. I pull crossing duty on Tuesdays." She stepped to the microphone, palms flat on the wood. "We heard the engine before we saw the car," she said. "A low rumble, then it opened up. He went through the light so fast my kids actually shouted. Not scared, excited, like it was a stunt show." She swallowed. "The next morning, half of them were talking about the red Mercedes that flies," she added. "They thought it was something to copy." Liam stared at the floor tiles. Caprio nodded once. "Thank you, Ms. Lopez. You may sit." He turned back to Liam. "So when you say, 'nobody was there,' he said, what you mean is, You didn't bother to see them." Before Liam could answer, a thin man in a ball cap and worn jacket levered himself up with the help of the bench. "Your Honor," he called. "Harold Jenkins. I live across from the New Walker condos." Caprio gestured him forward. "Go ahead, Mr. Jenkins." Harold gripped his cap in both hands. "Since those buildings went up," he said, "we get midnight races. Same car, same laugh out the window. We called the cops 3 times. First 2, they said they'd speak to the young men. Third time, a cruiser rolled through after they'd already peeled off." He glanced at Liam. "I did a year in Vietnam," he added. "Never thought coming home I'd be more nervous of a teenager with a key fob than of a convoy." A few older heads bobbed grimly. Liam let out a breath. "They're making it sound worse than it was," he muttered. "I wasn't that close to anyone." Ms. Lopez's voice came again, calmer than his. "One of my boys looked up at me after you passed," she said, and said, 'Miss Lopez, if he'd hit us, that would have blown up online.'" She shook her head slightly. "That's how they processed it. Not, we could have died. Just, we would have been famous." The judge let the silence stretch until even Liam seemed to feel it. Then he turned to Sharon Walker. "Mrs. Walker," he said, "have you or your husband ever contacted the police department or City Hall about complaints involving your son's driving?" Her fingers tightened around her purse strap. "My husband may have phoned a captain he knows," she admitted. "He was worried it would get blown out of proportion. Liam's applications. We didn't want this following him." A soft, bitter sound moved through the benches. Caprio didn't raise his voice. "Well, this is the proportion now," he said. "No back offices, no quiet calls, no captain to tuck it away." He faced Liam squarely. "Every adult around you has treated you like glass," he said. "Too delicate to be told no and left to feel it." He tapped the file once with his knuckle. "In a few minutes," he went on, "you're going to learn what the word no sounds like when it doesn't come with an escape hatch." A folded note appeared at the edge of the bench. The clerk leaned in. "Your Honor, Mr. Walker's father is on the line," he murmured. "He's asking to address the court." Caprio's jaw moved once, then stilled. "Patch him through on speaker," he said, "and note that he's on the record." A small box on the clerk's desk crackled. Then a smooth, practiced voice filled the room. "Judge Caprio, this is Daniel Walker. I want to apologize for my son's lapse in judgment and assure you that any fines, any damage, whatever the city needs, we'll cover it immediately. I'd hate for a minor traffic matter to cast a shadow over his future." Several people in the gallery shifted. One woman let out a soft, disbelieving laugh on the word minor. At the podium, Liam's shoulders eased. Of course his father would step in. That's how the world worked. Caprio kept his gaze on the boy. "Mr. Walker," he said toward the speaker, "has your name appeared in this court before?" A pause, barely perceptible. "Years ago, perhaps," Daniel replied. "Construction issues. We resolved them amicably." The judge turned to the clerk. "Pull any prior matters under Daniel Walker." Pages rustled. A file older and thinner than Liam's appeared on the bench. 15 years ago, Caprio read. Violations tied to a redevelopment site. Illegal parking of heavy equipment. After-hours noise. Neighbor complaints about trucks at 2 in the morning. He tapped the brittle paper. "At the time," he said, "this court imposed small penalties and accepted your promise to be a good neighbor." Harold Jenkins gave a grim nod. "We remember those nights," he muttered. Caprio looked toward Sharon. "You mentioned a foundation," he said. "What does it support?" She straightened. "We fund art programs, youth sports, upgrades for local schools," she said. "We've given to Lincoln Elementary. We care deeply about this community." From her seat, Ms. Lopez lifted her head. "Your name is on our gym wall," she said. "We're grateful for the scoreboard. It doesn't slow his car." Sharon's mouth opened, then closed again. The judge signaled to the technician. "Roll back the court audio from 5 minutes ago," he ordered, "the moment after I opened this file." A brief hiss, then Liam's recorded whisper filled the room, unmistakable. "This old clown thinks he's gonna teach me something. Watch this." Then the faint scrape of his chair, the camera catching the raised middle finger. The clip cut off. No one spoke. The silence felt heavier than the insult itself. Caprio glanced at the speaker box. "Mr. Walker," he said, voice level, "years back, you stood in front of this bench, and I treated your promises as good collateral. Today, I'm looking at the return on that investment in your son." He closed the old folder and laid it beside the new, thicker one. "This isn't just about what a 17-year-old did at a traffic light," he said quietly. "It's about what a family with money has taught him he can do to everyone else." He turned his attention fully to Liam. "And that, young man, is what we're going to talk about next." Caprio rested his palms on the bench, as if he were bracing the whole room. "Liam," he said, "we're going to try something you may not have done before. We're going to look at you without the props." He ticked them off with a finger. "Take away the Mercedes. Take away the building with your last name on it. Take away the donations, the gym plaques, the fancy logo on your sweatshirt." He leaned forward. "What's left? What do the people in this room actually know you for today?" Liam opened his mouth, then shut it. "I'm not a bad person," he said finally. But it sounded like he was answering a different question. Sharon tried to step in. "He's very bright. I didn't ask you," Caprio said without looking at her. "I asked him." He turned his head toward the benches. "Everyone here over 50, he said, who was working a job, serving, raising kids, or some mix of all three at 17. Raise a hand." Hands went up. Calloused fingers, arthritic knuckles, a veteran's wristband. A few dry chuckles. "2 jobs, Judge. 3, if you count the night shift." Liam looked at them and, for the first time, seemed smaller than the room instead of towering over it. The judge went quiet, the way a person does before they say something they can't unsay. "Let me tell you what I see, Liam," he said at last. "With all your money, your car, your father's name, you're still the poorest kid in this room, because the only thing you own is your ego, and even that you just put up for likes." The sentence hit like a dropped weight. No one clapped. No one murmured. They just stared at the boy who thought he was rich. Color rose in Liam's face, then drained. For once, there was nothing quick or clever waiting on his tongue. Caprio didn't let him look away. "You flipped me off," he said. "Honestly, that's the least of it. The real insult was what you told this city with your driving. Your children, your sleep, your sidewalks, they're extras in the movie of my life." Liam swallowed. "I didn't think about it like that," he managed. "I just wanted it to look cool." The judge tilted his head. "Does it look cool now?" Liam's voice was barely above a whisper. "No, sir." "Good," Caprio said, "because now we can talk about consequences." He picked up his pen. "Every citation stays," he said. "Paid in full. Not by a corporate account. From funds in your own name. If that means working, so be it." He set the pen down. "Your license is suspended for 6 months. You will not sit behind a wheel in this state until you've completed a defensive driving course in person and a session with families who've lost people to minor traffic matters." Liam's shoulders sagged. "And since you like cameras," the judge added, "you're going to face one properly. The school district will arrange for you to record a message to students about why your choices were reckless. No spin. No excuses. You will say it the way you just said it here." He wasn't done. "Finally, 50 hours of community service. half at Lincoln Elementary, half on Mr. Jenkins's block. You'll hold signs at that crosswalk, carry boxes up those old stairs, sweep the sidewalks you treated as racetracks. Caprio folded the file closed. You wanted an audience, he said. Now you have one. It's time you gave them something worth hearing. The courtroom emptied in slow waves. Papers went back into folders, coats over arms, the quiet murmur of people who had already moved on to the next errand of the day. Liam and his mother stood near the doors, the echo of the gavel still between them. Your father is furious about that school video, Sharon said at last. He says it's humiliating. Liam watched an older couple shuffle past, hand in hand. For once, he said, this isn't really about him. She looked at him, surprised by the sentence more than the verdict. There was nothing left to sign, no form to rescue him with. She simply nodded. A week later, the camera belonged to the school, not to him. An empty auditorium, rows of folded seats, a tripod set up in front of the stage. Ms. Lopez sat off to the side, a police officer in the back. Liam wore a plain t-shirt, no logos, no watch. He tried the first take like a commercial. Hi, I'm Liam Walker, and I'd like to remind everyone to drive safely. Stop, Ms. Lopez said gently. Talk to the kid who saw your car and thought you were some kind of hero. He stared at the lens for a moment, then let his shoulders drop. My name is Liam, he began again, slower. If you saw that red car blow through a light and thought it looked impressive, it wasn't. It was me acting like the only thing that mattered was how I looked on a screen. He paused, searching for words. I walked into that courtroom thinking money made me important, he said. I walked out understanding I was the one in there, with nothing real to my name. Silence in the hall. Ms. Lopez didn't smile, but she didn't stop him either. Use that, she said quietly. That's the truth they need. A few weeks later, the same intersection sounded different. No engine roaring, just the click of a handheld sign as it flipped from slow to stop, the squeak of sneakers on asphalt, children's voices rising and falling like birds. Liam stood at the curb in a reflective vest, hand up, watching a line of small backpacks cross in front of him. A boy tugged at his friend's sleeve. That's him, the boy whispered, from the video. My mom made me watch it, the other replied. She said, see that? That's what happens when you think nothing can touch you. From his porch across the street, Harold Jenkins leaned on his cane, taking it in. When the last kid stepped onto the sidewalk, Harold called out. You look better standing still than flying past, he said. Liam managed a faint smile. I still owe you a mailbox, sir. You owe this block your attention, Harold answered. The wood and metal we can replace. Months later, Liam rode shotgun in someone else's sedan. Music thumped. Laughter filled the car. The light ahead blinked to yellow at a familiar corner. Gun it, the driver said, foot twitching toward the floor. Liam's hand shot out, not to film, but to touch the dash. Don't, he said. Just stop. You don't want that kind of talk with a judge, trust me. The other boy hesitated, then eased the brake. The car rolled to a clean halt. Outside, the school sign glowed in the early dusk. Back in his chambers, between cases, Judge Caprio sometimes saw the school district's email updates. One note mentioned a student assembly, where a certain video played, followed by an unusually quiet room of teenagers. Can one morning in court rewrite a life lived on shortcuts? No one in that building would pretend to know. But the next time Liam saw a red light at a crosswalk, he wasn't thinking about followers or views. He was thinking about a room full of older faces, a man with a cane, a teacher with 30 small hands crossing the street behind her, and a line from an old judge who measured wealth in something other than dollars.